This is the Editor's Half Hour. Step into the life of an editor for 30 minutes as we discuss the craft of editing, industry trends, and editorial resources. Your host is co-founder and CEO of Peak Publishing Inc., Nadia Jaja Pupa. She is experienced in all facets of the publishing industry, from editing to design, and works with corporate clients and self-published authors. Nadia and her guests are about to share powerful insights and stories on what it takes to be an editor. And this is your host, Nadia Jaja Pupa.
Welcome, listeners, to the Editor's Half Hour. You are in for a treat. I know I say it every time I have an episode out, but you really are in for a treat because we have an awesome episode where we can take a deep breath, reassess where we're at, and evaluate what we're doing as freelancers. So that's what we're going to do in this episode, is evaluate our lifestyle, finding your happy place as an editor. And I couldn't have a more perfect guest to talk about this topic. And I have Marie. Welcome, Marie. Please introduce yourself. Tell the listeners what you do, what you're working on, all the things.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. It's so good to be here. So I am a developmental editor and also a ghostwriter, and I do both kind of equally. Right now I'm working on a book that I'm ghostwriting, and I also am working on book developmental editing projects at the same time. So it's never a dull moment.
I love it. And that's exactly what it's like in my lifestyle, where I'm not working on the same things. I'm working on multiple things, fiction, nonfiction on the author side. And then there's corporate work as well. Do you do work in the corporate space?
I do, yes. I run a small content agency called Muse Content, and we're a team of like medical journalists, writers, copy editors who do content for mostly health and science companies. So that's I don't know if you'd call it a side hustle. That's another string to my business's bow.
I mean, it's similar to my business. You know, I have my corporate side that encompasses everything, not just corporations, but academic institutions, nonprofits, and that really does help pay the bills. You know, that's the side of the business that brings in some great income. But then the other side that really speaks to my heart is the author side of the business. And we'll talk about both of that and juggling, you know, between both of those things. But for the listeners to hear, I met Marie on LinkedIn, I think. That's
Yes.
how you reached out, right?
That's right.
And then we connected. I can't even begin to tell you, by the way, how many editors I've met on LinkedIn alone, which is amazing. And then we find out that we're in similar editing groups and we connect through those. But so we met on LinkedIn, and then we had just a one-on-one conversation. And so I found we had so much in common, and it was so great. We both have kids. We both are, you know, creating that balance in our lifestyle between our home life, our work life, being our own boss. So many fun things that we talked about. And in that conversation, we both, you know, talked about our happy place. And Marie was like, you were just like, that's what I want the title of our episode to be, is Finding Your Happy Place. And I just felt like I met an old friend, even though I had never met you before. It was so much fun.
I love that. I felt the same way. Absolutely.
Yeah, we just had so much in common. And then what made me laugh even harder was we both had a similar summer trip where you did a camper van, I did an RV. It was like so hilarious because I read your post on LinkedIn and you said something about the amount of time was too long. And that was the same conclusion that we came to.
What did you find was the sweet spot? Because we went for 2 weeks. We went for 14 days.
Wow.
And it was a consensus within the RV that like 9 days is the right amount of time. And then we still had like all of these days. It was fine, but it was too long.
It was too long. Same. When we hit the 9-day mark, we were like, Okay. It was just felt like rinse and repeat, and it wasn't fun anymore. So we had those moments. We still had those magical moments being in the wilderness, in the forest, by the ocean. So we had those great moments, but I think a week is fine,
Yeah.
maybe 9 days tops, but we did a full 12 days. We didn't even do a full 2 weeks, and it was a lot. It was too much.
We are
Too much.
we're trailblazers. We are adventurous souls. We went for it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. But the memories you made were probably so great.
Oh yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, I'm like, okay, enough about our trip. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. We've got to talk about our happy place, because we did probably have those moments on the trip of our happy place on vacation outside of work. But let's talk about work. And I want to hear from your perspective. What does that mean as an editor? What is your happy place as an editor?
my happy place is finding myself in a state of flow. I think that is I'm not good at meditation. I'm one of these people for whom meditation actually makes me really anxious. Yoga is great, running is great, movement, but I find it very hard to sit still. So when I'm in that deep flow state with editing, which I think is like a magical place it can take you when you're really into what you're doing, time flies and you just feel like your creative and cerebral well is full, and you just get to be off and away, and that's my happy place, is being able to be in that state of flow, which I think is rare. It's harder to find those moments nowadays. We have all of these notifications, we have all of these things popping up all the time. It's really hard to find that deep focus. And what I found, and we talked about this in our chat, was, like part of the reason why I went freelance a couple years ago, because I had been climbing the corporate ladder. I was editorial director at the last job I was at. It was really rewarding, but I was really missing like being close to the work itself. And now I get to do that, and I get to be in that state of flow, and that's my happy place.
Oh, I love that. Being in a state of flow. I never thought to describe it in that way. Some people I've heard call it like their genius zone. There's other ways to, describe that feeling of just being super productive and really thinking creatively and problem solving. That's a lot of what we're doing as editors, whether it's, the dev edits, the copy edits, there's a lot going on. So in that zone, like when you're in it, what happens to you if you do get distracted? What happens if you get calls from the school or, text messages, emails? Do you shut those off before you get into your flow?
I don't. I am notoriously bad at that. And I've read all of these things you should do, like put your phone on the other side of the room and do that. I don't. I do multitask, but I have found for me my own unique state of flow does involve quickly dipping into the WhatsApp message from my like role-playing game where we're talking about our characters and just quickly adding something, and then like I'm back. So I can do that as long as I'm not shifting from work there to other work on the computer. Like I can dip into things here.
If it works for you, I think that's really, really what it comes down to is, listeners who see this episode, they're probably coming to listen like they want advice. I'm always open to advice on working productively. What are ways that I can, find joy in my work, because sometimes I don't find joy in my work. Admin tasks are annoying. No one loves to run payroll or, I don't know, dealing with admin stuff. All of it. Sending invoices is annoying. So those are not joyful things or, that bring out take me to my happy place. And, for me, I'm not very consistent in the way that I work in some ways, where sometimes I do need, depending on what I'm working on, sometimes I do need to work in solitude. Sometimes it helps to be in a co-working space or at a coffee shop. What for you, Marie, what works for you, and share with listeners on how you feel the most productive and happy. You know, what are the things you were saying before this interview, actually? Marie was describing her morning, and just her morning, so I literally pictured it like a movie scene with like some cute music and like Marie walking down the street. So
There's
maybe
like-
describe.
There's like a Vanessa Carlton song in the background, making my way. Yeah. But actually, that really was the exception to the rule, because
Okay.
today I did work in a coffee shop, and I can't tell you the last time I did that. It will have been
Same.
like, I don't know, a year ago maybe.
Same.
So it just so happened that my day lined up where I needed to just be in this area of town for a few hours. I couldn't get back home. So I was like, well, I'll do some bits and bobs here. But I wouldn't choose that because I love my office, my home office. It's like a little cozy den. It's a very small room. It was my daughter's nursery when she was a baby, and now she's
Aw.
moved into the bigger room. And so my office is just like a tiny, it has bright yellow walls, because it was painted as a nursery. So it's a very
I love
happy
it.
space.
Yeah.
And I'm also one of these people that, like, I am very tactile, and I write a lot of handwritten notes. And like, for example, I'm writing a fiction novel right now, and I have all these notes on my wall. So trying to go to a coffee shop to write my novel is like a no-go, because my world is there. I'm okay to focus, though. I have found I can edit in a coffee shop, and that's in fact the work I did today. So I
Okay.
was editing, and that I can do, and I don't even need headphones. I'm somehow able to kind of like let my surroundings melt away when I'm editing. Writing is a different beast, though, and I need to not be around anybody. I need to be in my safe cocoon.
Because that's a deeper level of creativity that you're tapping into when you're writing versus when you're editing. You know, editing in some ways, even if you're editing fiction, there's still a technical aspect to it, right? So being in a coffee shop sometimes is a great environment, you know, depending on what it is. But I love it. I love it. I like that you're basically opening up that door for editors to understand that we can be fluid in the way that we work and not so rigid, because sometimes it feels stale. Sometimes the atmosphere can really feel stale, and I don't want to be in my office. And sometimes when I get overwhelmed with certain things, or if I've got a lot on my plate, I actually don't even want to come in my office. Like, I have that, not a sinking feeling, but that, like, I just don't want to be in here. So I'm in my office right now. I record all of my podcast episodes in my office. So there's a lot of fun things that happen in here, but other times it's just a lot. And I'll just go down into the TV, in front of the TV, and I'll watch Netflix, or I'll have something like Great British Bake Off in the background playing while I get some work done. And so that's what you're basically describing, that openness and willingness to just change it up a little bit. And that's okay, because it might, enhance your workflow, right?
Absolutely. It makes me think of the John Milton Paradise Lost quote, "The mind is a place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven." And so I
Wow,
think
yeah.
so long as wherever you are, your mind is in the right place, it doesn't really matter where you are. But just, finding what works for you and what's right. So, like, I don't choose co-working spaces. I don't choose cafes, but I know that I can in a pinch, and I can get work done, and that's good to know.
Yes, yes. So I don't know if we mentioned this, but you are American, but you're not in the United States. You're in the UK. Let's talk about how you got you're in the UK, how you're based there, and then let's share a little bit about your career journey and your path.
Yeah, so they're both intertwined, so I can kill two birds with one stone on that one.
Perfect.
So I in a past life I was an actor, actually. I was a child actor. I grew up in Nebraska and then went to theater school, and I moved to Los Angeles, and I was like a working actor there for like 5 to 7 years maybe. one year, I
a
made
lot.
all of my money from acting
Wow.
and not
Wow.
waiting tables, which was a big
Wow.
deal.
That's amazing. But how old were you then? So you had to have been a teenager or in your 20s?
No, well, I was a child actor,
Child.
a theater actor when I was younger, but when I moved to
Okay.
Los Angeles, I was 20 and
Okay.
yeah, lived there until my mid 20s. But it's hard. It's a very hard life. And
Yeah.
I started to kind of fall out of love with it a little bit. I'd go to auditions and I was auditioning for like blonde toothpaste girl number 2. And I was like, this isn't Chekhov. This isn't what I got into acting for. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, what would I do? What would my life be if I'm not an actor? What would that look like? And I realized that all of the kind of like elective courses I would take at university as part of my theater degree were always English classes, literature classes.
Yeah.
So I decided I went back to university. I got my bachelor's in English from the University of California, and then moved to Berlin for a year and studied German literature in Berlin, which was wild.
Wow.
And then moved to San Francisco for a year and got my first job after I graduated, which was in journalism. And I was really lucky. It was kind of like it kind of feels like a catch-22 getting into journalism because you need experience to get a job, but you can't, it's very tricky. So I managed to get this job because I spoke German and they were a German company and they were opening up the US branch of their print publication, which was all about the science of solar power. And I think they hired me because I spoke
Wow.
German and they said, oh, well, she can communicate with colleagues in Berlin. So I kind of like got in to an actual writing job early, which was lucky.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and then I was there for a year, and meanwhile had met my now husband, who's half British, and I was looking to go to get my master's degree in literature, and he said, "Well, it would be good for me if we moved to the UK, so why don't you apply in the UK?" So we moved to the UK in 2009 or 10, I think it was, and
Wow.
yeah, and I got my master's degree, and then we've been here ever since.
That's amazing. Oh, that's amazing.
Following on from that, then that's when my career kind of took off. So I worked for that magazine while I was getting my master's degree, and then I became senior editor for like a health news website, and then that really grew and grew. And we were acquired, and then I kind of laddered up and then was recruited to, so it took off from there. And then as I was leaving my last company to go freelance, I was approached to be the ghostwriter for a book with Penguin Random House, and that kind of kicked off this new side of my career. So
That's
the
amazing.
story.
So at that point when you were approached by Penguin and then you had this opportunity, did you walk away from the corporate job you had, or was it that you added was that your side hustle that then became your main hustle? How did you transition from that?
I was incredibly lucky, and I don't know how you feel about this, but so I've been freelance for just under 2 years now, and
Okay.
I just keep feeling like I'm falling into luck. Like things just keep working out, and that's what happened. I had made the decision I was leaving, and right as I made that decision is when I was approached. So
Wow.
I thought I was going to not have any work for a while. I thought I'd take some time off. And then I got that. And then when that book project ended, somebody, a businessman came to me from the States and needed help with his book and had heard about me. And so I thought I'd have time off after that book project, but then another one. And these things just keep happening. Every now and then I'll have these moments of panic if I look too far in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I just think there's no way this can keep working. You just got to think, okay, someday it's gonna not work, but it keeps working.
Yeah.
So as long as it keeps working, I'll keep going, and let's hope that continues.
Well, but you touched on a little soft point there with freelancers is you are chasing projects in some ways, or you're in a constant position of finding work. And I think when you have like a quote unquote big break, you know that you ride that wave and it's really great, but then it ends. And so when that ends, there is a little bit of that panic of, oh gosh, where's the next project going to come from? Am I going to be okay? I'm good right now, but what will it be like 3 months from now, 3 years from now? Is this sustainable? So how do you get yourself out of that mode of thinking? Because that's like a little bit of that scarcity mindset. How do you get through that?
Yes, I think like if the biggest piece of advice I could give to people who are thinking of going freelance and maybe haven't yet but are curious about it, I think the thing that has allowed me to be bold and confident and to say no, because saying no is actually very important too. Um, the reason why I've had that boldness to do that is because I had a chunk of money that I saved away. I had 6 months of pay that I had stockpiled away, that I had in a savings account. So I knew I could not work for 6 months and I'd be fine. And I know that that's not possible for everybody, but that's given me the confidence to choose the projects that bring me joy. And that just really like snowballs in a really positive way, because when you're really joyful about the things you're doing and you're not just doing it because you're scared and you need money, you're like, yes, I've chosen this. You chose me, but I also chose you. That's a really powerful place and a place of confidence. And you're going to end up doing really good work because you're not coming from a scarcity mindset. As you said, you're being really mindful about who you're choosing to work with, and it's very empowering. But the only reason I feel like I've been able to make the choices I've made is because I had that safety net.
I like that. I really, really like that. And I'm so glad you shared that, because some editors, or I should just say freelancers, they want to wait. There's a hesitation there before they make that jump. And that's okay, because that's essentially what you did. Is you didn't just do this leap of faith of everything's going to work out and everything's great and it's just all working out and all these projects, it's great when things do work out and you have the opportunities, but you gave yourself a safety net. And I think that's such an important thing that you're sharing. Is it wasn't one of those just happy-go-lucky moments. You had a preconceived mental model of what you wanted to do and how you wanted it to work out. And because of that, an opportunity came your way and you were ready to just say yes or no. But let's talk about the no, because I have a problem saying no. I say yes more often than I say no. Give me advice. This advice is for me, and the listeners can hear this. What can I learn from you on the power of saying no, and what have you said no to? What things are just not going to work for you?
Well, this is a trick that my father-in-law gave me, actually. He's a retired businessman and has given me a lot of like really good financial advice. And he said to me, if there's a project that you aren't really excited about doing, like you don't feel super passionate about it, but you feel okay doing it, but you're not overly interested, he said, increase your rates.
Okay.
And if they say no, it doesn't matter, because you weren't like really, really, really wanting it. And then you can kind of test what your worth is by doing that, So there have been some projects where I've, given a quote and they've walked away from it, and I've gone, okay, so this is a value issue. And it was kind of like finding what your worth is, like from the outside. On the flip side, I said yes to projects the fee that we've agreed is much lower than what I would normally charge. And I take those on strategically, because either they're going to increase my wheelhouse, they're going to add something that like I'm going to learn something from it, or it's like I know that long term this is strategically good for me to have worked on this project, for example. So I know that sounds a little bit tricky, but I found that it's helped me understand like what it is I want, what I'm worth, what people are willing to pay, and also where I'm willing to compromise myself. Um, but that didn't answer your main question. I went on a tangent there.
No, but you did. You
To
did. Go
answer your
ahead.
question about saying no is ask yourself, do you feel passionate about this project? Um, Also, like, are there any red flags? Um,
Yeah.
can I tell you a really fun red flag I had?
Yes.
This
Please.
is really fun.
Please.
A potential client didn't want to make a decision on whether they would work with me or not because Mercury was in retrograde.
Oh my God.
which
Okay.
is fine. I'm happy with everybody's beliefs, but I just knew that that person was going to be very difficult to work with.
Okay.
In a way that, like, I'm okay with difficulty, but it was like a different level of difficulty, and I thought, you know what? I think I'm gonna say no to this one.
Okay. Okay.
So trust
Yeah.
your instincts and say no. Feel empowered to say no, because the more you say no to things that you don't want, the more you're making space for the yeses that you do want. And if you take
Yeah.
on things you don't want, you're just piling on. You're eating away at your joy, you know. And
Yeah.
it's not as if every single job I take on is like la la la. This is the best thing ever. But I will be honest, most of them are, there's something about each of the projects I take on that there is a kernel of something really juicy or really that I'm really passionate about. Like that must be there. And if it's not there, then put your effort, put your time into other things, marketing or other things to bring more of those big yeses that you want.
I like that. No, you really did a great job of answering this question because it's not a straightforward answer. So it was kind of a tricky question, to be honest with you, because as you're answering it, I'm like, I don't even know, because I'm not good at saying no. And I always find something enticing about every project that comes my way, and every single client that has something. It's like, oh, I know they're on a tight budget, but what they're trying to do and what they're working on is so unique. I want to be a part of it. And that's on the author side. On the corporate side, it's like, it's not as creative, but sometimes I see that as a challenge because they're asking for something to be more engaging, but the content is very bland and dry. But then that's a challenge that I'm like, challenge accepted. And then I'm like, I'm taking this on and I'm going to, come up with ways to make this content more vibrant and exciting. So those are ways that I look at projects, and there's always that angle. And then it's like, well, we need to make money too. So like there's that driving force of how well it'll pay. But I do like the strategy of fluctuating those rates. And, the fact that I serve and we both do, we serve a vast array of clientele that are not the same. Every client is different. We can be fluid in our pricing. I'm not going to charge a major corporation the same rate I'm going to charge an author. And so that's a different way to approach the business that I appreciate and I respect. And so then there's the other side of freelancers who are like, transparency is key. Put your rates and everything on your website, and that's fine too if you're serving fiction writers specifically, or just doing books. There's so much out there outside of just books. And so there's a different pricing model and a different mentality that just go with those things. So I really appreciate that. And it's great to hear, from a freelancing perspective, that there are different ways to do things. There's not just a one size fits all with a freelance business. So you mentioned briefly about getting advice. Who do you go to? You mentioned, you said your father or father-in-law?
My father-in-law. Yeah.
Father-in-law. I love that. And so finding people in your inner circle, in your social circle, maybe in the editorial community, other networks and groups. Tell our listeners where you get advice outside of, the various circles and spheres in your life. How have you gotten the most business? Is it in your network? Is it outside your network? Give it to us. We want to hear it. How do we become the successful freelancer of nonstop, steady stream of work?
Yes, actually, do you know something that really surprised me when I went freelance? I was nervous and thought maybe it would be like competitive, like maybe the other editors around you, you'd be competing with them. But I found the exact opposite true. I found that the editing community, whether on LinkedIn or I meet up also locally here in the UK, we have the Chartered Institute of Editing and Proofreading, and I'm an advanced professional member of that. And I meet up with people here in Bristol, where I live, in person. And we have tea and we talk about, editing, and we guide each other. And they're so supportive. And I've also met up with other, for example, I went to the London Book Fair last March, and
How cool.
it was so great. I loved it. I'll go there every year now. But I met up with a couple of ghostwriters who I met on LinkedIn, and one of them just randomly was from the States, happened to be here for the London Book Fair, and we met up in person and we had tea and we exchanged notes on rates, and they were more experienced than me in the ghostwriting world. So I've just, the amount of support and camaraderie in this community is amazing to me. I've had nothing but positive experiences from other people sharing their experiences, giving you advice, acting like mentors. And then also I've, sometimes you'll come across editors or writers who have classes. I've invested in myself as well. So I've taken courses. In the last 2 years, I've really leveled up my experience. I've booked coaching, one-to-one coaching with other writers and editors too. So definitely don't be afraid to put money into yourself too, because that has actually helped me quite a bit too. So that answers your question about the networking.
It does. Yes.
The getting of jobs. It's just come from lots of different areas. So, I don't put loads into marketing for myself. Luckily, my husband is a technical architect and he did my whole website for free.
I love it.
So thank you,
Same.
husband.
I know. Thank you. Same to mine. Thank you to my husband. He did the whole website for me. We're lucky in that way.
I would be lost.
Yeah.
So that was great. But then, yeah. Also, through my network. So, I post on LinkedIn. I make sure that I post twice a week on LinkedIn. I don't usually post more than that because I wouldn't enjoy that. I know a lot of people are like, post every day or post 5 days a week. And that's great too. But that I would find it arduous, whereas I really enjoy, and I usually don't plan out my LinkedIn posts. I write them in the moment on the day when I plan to, and whatever is speaking to me, I write about that. And because of that, I've gained quite a few followers, and I get regular queries. I get people coming to me regularly for editing projects, and then also a lot of the work I've gotten is through my established network. So people I've worked with before. One of my clients was somebody I went to university with who saw what I was posting on LinkedIn. So you never know who's listening and who's watching. So yeah. And then I also put myself out there. So I, like, for example, at the London Book Fair, I went up to an agency that works with writers and editors and gave them my card. And I do the thing. I do the hard thing of like, hi, I'm so-and-so. Let me give you my card. And I have an actual card. And I
love it.
I just realized you have to get over yourself, and nobody's ever going to think, oh my gosh, who's that? That's all in your head. Like, just do it, be brave, and follow up, and be what in your mind feels slightly annoying. If they don't write back, like, what's the worst that happens? They don't write back. They're not going to think about you. They're not going to be sitting there going, oh, Marie Ellis, she's just silly,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you're making a good point. That's such a good point. Putting yourself out there, you have to as a freelancer. It's part of the thing, So I want to dive deeper into this about getting work, how you've gotten work, the networking aspect, putting yourself out there. There's a lot there. I want to hear some good stories about that. I want to hear your thoughts on AI. So I know we have to wrap up this main interview, but we're going to keep talking. I want to hear your thoughts on AI as a ghostwriter. I think that is what people are just dying to hear. And I've made a promise to my listeners that I'm reserving the topic of AI for the exclusive content. We're all sick of hearing about it. It's a thing. It's here to stay. I understand that. But I also don't want my main interviews to be just soaked up with all this AI stuff. So we are going to continue this conversation in the exclusive content. But before we do that, Marie, what words of wisdom can you share to maybe an editor in the early portion of their career, finding joy and building a business? It's not all fun and it's not all sunshines and rainbows and all of these beautiful things. I mean, it is tough sometimes. Just give us some words of wisdom for the freelancer who is timid, nervous, hesitant to make that leap.
That's
I'm
such
putting
a
a
big
lot
question.
on you. It's such a big. I'm so evil as a podcast
Such a
host.
big question.
I get to ask the loaded question.
I think this is gonna sound. I don't know what you do with this piece of advice, or how individuals will interpret it. But never stop believing in yourself. You are. This is a career that can feel really tricky at times, and especially with writing and even editing, there is no a complete objective correct answer. It's not like math where it's like this is wrong and this is right. There are varying shades of good and not so good, and people will have a lot of opinions, and when it's gray territory, the instinct to not believe in yourself, especially when you're first starting out, can be very strong. Fight against that, because the only way you get better is by just continuing to say no to the negativity, and mostly inside your own head, and to just say, I'm love this, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep getting better. And you will. If you have that mindset, then you will, and you'll land somewhere you couldn't have imagined.
I love that. That is so beautifully said, and that speaks to me. I'm trying not to cry. That speaks to me, because there is a lot of self-doubt that freelancers struggle with, and the imposter syndrome in some ways. Like, can I do this project? I don't know. So there's a lot of that happens. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much, Marie, for this wonderful interview. We're not done. We're going to keep going. So listeners, stay tuned, and, consider joining my Patreon to get access to the exclusive content. Find Marie on LinkedIn. I'll put that in the show notes, a link specifically to her on LinkedIn, and reach out to her. Don't be afraid to reach out to guests on the podcast. That's the way to network. That's the way to grow. Marie just sent me a message. I think you sent me a message on LinkedIn and said, I like the podcast. Let's talk. And I'm so happy we did, because this was wonderful. So thank you again for your time. Listeners, find Marie. I'm encouraging you to reach out. She's wonderful, awesome, and has a fabulous network of editors. So that's our episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Editor's Half Hour. This podcast is your go-to resource for editorial trends, opening the discussion for new ideas through the real-life stories of editors. For more information about Nadia Jaja Pupa and her business, visit peakpublishing.com. That's PIQUE publishing.com. And remember to subscribe and follow the Editor's Half Hour wherever you get your podcasts.